Welcome to a new deep dive, exploring what we like to call amazing stories. Today we're delving into a topic that really juxtaposes the romantic beauty of Paris with some pretty dark secrets hidden right beneath its streets. We're talking about strange occurrences in the legendary Paris catacombs.
It's a fascinating contrast, isn't it? You think of Paris, you think of light, art, history, all out in the open.
Exactly.
And yet underneath it all, there's this massive labyrinth, this monumental ossuary. It just naturally attracts these kinds of macabre, inexplicable stories. And for this deep dive, we've got two quite different sources, right?
That's right. First up, we have a fictional excerpt called Zombies Under Paris. It's a narrative about investigators exploring the catacombs and running into, well, the title pretty much gives it away.
Zombies, got it.
And then we'll look at excerpts from a YouTube video transcript. The video is titled, "What Dark Secret Do the Catacombs of Paris Hide?" from a channel called Relatomania. It's presented more like an archaeological investigation into the origins of a zombie-like plague down there.
Okay, so two very different angles on the same unsettling place. Fiction can obviously take creative liberties, whereas the YouTube video tries for an investigative feel, even if it's heading into equally speculative territory.
Definitely.
Oh.
Oh, and sorry to interrupt, but just wanted to quickly say, if you're enjoying this deep dive, please do hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you have specific topics you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments. Thanks, and back to it. So our mission today is really to pull out the main ideas from these two sources, so you can kind of form your own view on the strange events they describe deep under Paris. Let's start with Zombies Under Paris. How does it set things up?
Well, the story immediately throws you into that oppressive atmosphere of the catacombs, the constant darkness, the dampness you can almost feel in the air, the sort of forgotten underground world.
Yeah.
And right from the start, it builds mystery by mentioning people disappearing down there. Initially, they're just presented as disappearances, people drawn in by the morbid curiosity of the place.
And it's interesting how the official explanation tries to rationalize it, accidents, suicides. But the narration suggests there's something more, right?
Yeah.
An underlying unease that the official story doesn't quite satisfy.
Exactly. And that's when we meet the investigators, Mathis and Claire.
What did you make of them? Their motivation?
Well, they're young, passionate about mysteries, that classic drive to find answers where others maybe don't want to look, and their decision to investigate on their own without official support that already tells you they sense something's being ignored or, actively covered up.
And their descent into the catacombs, it's described with lots of sensory details, isn't it? The absolute silence broken only by their footsteps, the heavy air, the growing cold.
Yeah, the writing really builds that feeling of entering a realm that doesn't quite belong to the living world. The atmosphere itself becomes almost like another character.
Yeah.
And then it reminds us of the actual history, how the catacombs were created in the 18th century to deal with overflowing cemeteries. That historical fact makes the supernatural twist that's coming feel even creepier, I think.
Absolutely. Thinking about all those millions of skeletons lining the walls. Yeah, it sets a grim stage.
And then the story introduces this macabre twist, a secret sect experimenting with the ancient bones, trying to bring back the dead, but accidentally creating zombies.
What did you think of that origin? A secret sect messing with old bones.
It's intriguing, the idea of messing with death itself, trying to reverse it, and the fact that it's accidental adds a layer of dark irony. It wasn't initially some grand evil plan, just an experiment gone horribly wrong.
So Mathis and Claire find this hidden chamber that's full of strange symbols, fresh human remains, a macabre altar, all the classic signs of dark rituals.
Yeah, very evocative imagery.
And Claire feels this strange vibration, like the place itself is alive. That's a really effective detail for building tension, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a clear sign they've stumbled onto the heart of something really sinister. The vibration especially suggests some kind of latent, unnatural energy, something beyond just stacks of bones.
And then boom, the first zombie encounter. The description is pretty chilling. Partly decomposed, bloodshot eyes, crumbling skin. And it moves with this surprising speed.
Yeah, that speed element catches them off guard.
Right. And Mathis shoots it, but the bullet barely slows it down. It really underlines how unstoppable these things are. How did this zombie depiction strike you compared to others?
Well, it draws on classic zombie tropes for sure, but putting them specifically in the catacombs intensifies the horror. And that supernatural speed makes them a much more immediate threat than, say, the traditional slow shambling kind.
Their escape through the tunnels, it creates that classic claustrophobic feeling like the catacombs themselves are trapping them.
The labyrinthine setting works perfectly for that.
And then more zombies start appearing,
Hmm.
and some of them even show signs of intelligence, holding back, maybe. That has a whole other layer of disturbance, doesn't it?
It really does. The idea that they retain fragments of their former selves, that they can adapt or wait, it makes them much creepier than just mindless eating machines. It suggests a real corruption of what they once were.
And then they find what seems like a safe room, only to discover the real source of the horror. This strange, hunched humanoid figure, bronze skin, an iron mask,
Yeah.
being worshipped by a crowd of zombies. The leader, the origin.
Wow, okay. So it's not just a random outbreak. There's a hierarchy.
Apparently. What does this leader figure symbolize, do you think?
Well, it introduces structure, maybe even intelligence behind the zombie threat. It elevates it from just a plague to something more organized, almost cult-like. And the Iron Mask adds that layer of mystery about its identity and origin, making it even more horrific.
They try using this ancient exorcism chart they found earlier, a brief moment of hope, maybe,
A desperate move.
but it quickly fades. There's a sudden tremor, the regular zombies just collapse. But the leader rises, and his mask falls off, revealing this pale, disfigured face with empty eyes.
Chilling. That's the peak horror moment right there. The reveal of this thing behind the mask. And the fact that the other zombies seem powered down by its presence suggests a really deep, terrifying connection.
And then the leader attacks. There's a sudden blinding flash of artificial sunlight. And next thing Mathis and Claire know, they're waking up in a hospital with fragmented memories.
Huh. So a very abrupt ending.
Yeah. It leaves so many questions unanswered, and that nagging feeling that the evil is still down there. Is that kind of unresolved ending more effective sometimes, do you think?
Often, yeah. It plays on uncertainty, leaves the audience with that lingering sense of unease. What was the light? Who rescued them? And crucially, is the threat really gone? The fact that the catacombs are officially closed afterwards and life goes on above contrasts sharply with what the protagonists know is still lurking below.
Exactly. The city just moves on, oblivious. Okay, so let's completely switch gears now and dive into that YouTube video from Mania. The tone is totally different, presenting itself as this archaeological investigation into the zombie plague's origin. What did you make of that initial contrast?
It's a really sharp contrast. We go from straightforward horror fiction to something trying to sound like historical research, even though it's dealing with an equally fantastical subject. And the starting premise is bold. This zombie plague isn't recent. It supposedly started back in the 18th century in the catacombs.
Right. What are the implications of placing the origin so far back?
Well, it allows them to weave it into actual history, which is quite a move. They connect it to the French Revolution, suggesting the real chaos was caused by these creatures, maybe an earlier, weaker strain of the virus.
And that the guillotine was actually used as a, indiscriminate control method against infected and just suspected people.
It's a radical rereading of a major historical event, isn't it? Using zombies to explain the revolution's violence. The idea of innocent people being caught up in it just because they were suspected of infection adds a dark twist to their theory, even if it has absolutely zero historical basis.
And they don't stop there. They mention a terrible weapon being discovered, becoming a state secret, even used by Napoleon. The idea that some of his soldiers might have been virus carriers, explaining his military success. That's a very strange historical take.
It's completely subverting known history, attributing military achievements to a supernatural cause. Zombie soldiers or virus-enhanced troops. It's definitely an alternative perspective, to put it mildly, not something that holds up to any serious historical scrutiny, obviously.
So then the video introduces the archaeologist Clarissa Duran in February 2023. She's going into Sector 9 of the catacombs with old maps, trying to find the oldest bone remains to understand this damned plague, as they call it. Her entry point is through the metro, and she finds some survivors hiding out down there. It sets up this kind of post-apocalyptic scene within the underground city itself. How did that setup strike you?
Using archaeology as the narrative frame is clearly an attempt to give it a veneer of serious investigation, even if the subject is pure fantasy. And mentioning survivors in the metro adds a layer of gritty realism, suggesting this threat is ongoing.
So she's navigating the tunnels, feeling the weight of the city above her, and then she hears this rhythmic noise, which leads her to an absolutely bizarre discovery. An underground rave. Over 100 people partying down there.
A rave in the middle of a supposed zombie plague zone.
Exactly. The irony's pretty thick, right? Lanterns, strobe lights, even graffiti of an infected person.
That's absurd, and yet kind of human in a strange way. People seeking escape and connection even in extreme circumstances. It's a jarring mix of normalcy and horror.
She meets a guy named Emmanuel at the Rays, tries to show him on her map where she's headed, this forbidden Sector 9, and then, as the narrator puts it, the predictable happens.
Let me guess. The music attracts the infected.
Yep. Chaos ensues, a pretty logical consequence within the story's rules. Is that clash between the partygoers' carelessness and the lurking danger.
It's almost a commentary, maybe unintentional, on ignoring a threat until it's literally at your door.
So, she and Emmanuel manage to escape. Turns out he's an experienced urban explorer, which is convenient.
Lucky break for her.
But then they hit this passage filled with, well, mostly fecal water. Pretty grim.
Ugh. Adds a layer of visceral unpleasantness to their escape.
But what they find on the other side is even more intriguing. This massive wall made entirely of bones, femurs, ribs, skulls arranged like some kind of gruesome puzzle.
Wow, a bone wall. What does that symbolize, do you think, in this investigative context?
Maybe a barrier to the truth. A deliberately constructed obstacle.
Could be. A physical representation of a hidden secret?
And there's an inscription scratched on a nearby column. Death is not the end. If the devil dwells in you, the solution is here.
Ooh, okay. That's cryptic and disturbing. It brings in this almost demonic element, suggesting the plague has some kind of evil or supernatural source, and the answer is right there, behind that wall.
So they try to dismantle the bone wall to see what's behind it, which leads to it collapsing, trapping Emmanuel, though apparently he miraculously survives, albeit with impaled tibias.
Yikes. So the barrier falls, but at a cost. What do they find?
This is the big reveal. Behind the wall, there are two infected individuals, but they're heavily covered in vegetation, like moss or something, and chained to the wall by their clothes. The implication is they've been there for centuries.
Whoa. The potential infected zero, the original ones.
That's the idea. It ties back to the 18th century origin theory. Finding these ancient captive infected is presented as the major discovery of this archaeological dig.
It definitely raises questions. Who chained them up? Why? And how did the plague spread if the originals were contained?
But things get complicated fast. The rave attracted more infected, blocking their escape route.
The consequences of the party catch up with them.
But then, unexpectedly, one of the chained zombies breaks free. In doing so, it actually causes part of the masonry wall behind it to collapse, opening up a potential new escape route.
How convenient and dangerous. An escape route provided by the very thing they're trying to escape from.
Totally ironic. Clarissa tries to subdue the freed zombie with a femur nice touch, using a bone as a weapon down there, but then disaster strikes.
What happens?
The opening created by the collapsing wall apparently connects to the Seine River somehow, because a massive torrent of water and rocks suddenly floods the chamber.
What? Water from the Seine. Never mind. So chaos.
Complete chaos. The flood washes away the ancient zombies, the evidence, and sweeps Emmanuel away too.
Oh, wow. So the proof is lost and her companion is gone.
Exactly. The video ends with the host asking what happened to Emmanuel, questioning the orgy of the zombies again, and asking viewers for comments. Another abrupt, unresolved ending, but very different from the fictional one. What did you make of that finale?
It's certainly abrupt and frustrating from the perspective of the investigation. The Seine flooding in feels like a bit of a deus ex machina, washing away all the crucial findings. It leaves the viewer hanging, much like the first source, but with a focus on lost evidence and unanswered questions rather than lingering dread.
So connecting these two sources, we see some interesting parallels, right? Both deal with weird, dangerous stuff happening deep inside the Paris catacombs.
Definitely. And the presence of some kind of infected being, whether classic zombies or these potentially viral infected, is a clear common thread.
They both tap into that idea of hidden secrets beneath the city.
And the sheer vastness and darkness of the catacombs is a perfect stage for these horrors, but the tones are miles apart.
Yeah, one is straight up horror fiction. The other tries to cloak itself in this pseudo-archaeological investigation language, even though the findings are just as fantastical.
Yet both stories keep returning to those core themes. Hidden history, the darkness below, the potential for truly terrifying discoveries under such an iconic city. Why do you think the catacombs specifically are such fertile ground for these kinds of stories?
Well, the reality is already pretty macabre, isn't it? Millions of skeletons arranged artfully beneath one of the world's most famous cities.
Exactly. It has this built-in aura of mystery and death. It's a constant, tangible reminder of mortality right under the feet of the living. That makes it a perfect canvas for projecting our fears about the unknown, about what might be hidden just out of sight.
So for our listeners, the key takeaways from this amazing story seem pretty clear. Both sources present these mysteries about zombie-like beings lurking in the Paris catacombs and the possibility of a long, hidden, terrifying history connected to them. And even though one source is fiction, it taps into very similar anxieties and mysteries explored in the other, more investigative source. What's the main conclusion we can draw from looking at them together?
I think it's fascinating how both fiction and this kind of pseudo-documentary approach converge on the same location, both feeding off that inherent mystery and morbid fascination surrounding the catacombs. They both invite us to wonder what else might be down there, beyond the official tours and histories, and they show how different kinds of storytelling can explore those same deep-seated fears about the unknown.
Which leads us to a final intriguing thought for you, the listener. Considering both the fictional tale of a hidden zombie leader and the pseudo-archaeological hunt for Patient Zero, what other secrets could possibly lie undiscovered in that vast, dark network beneath Paris? Could there be any grain of truth, however distorted, buried within these unsettling narratives?
Yeah, something to ponder. We encourage you to think about the real history of the catacombs, but also about that enduring human fascination with what lies beneath the surface, both literally and figuratively. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.